Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's a nice afternoon in Poor City, and yesterday we had our first live stream. I hope the connection will be better this today, and so I want to keep the momentum going up and just start with the more in-depth presentation of each tea area. I will just check, maybe you can tell me in the comment section if there's no problem how the sound is. I tried to tweak some parameters. Let's see if it works better. Of course, if the video is of poor quality, I still record it on my computer, so I'll be able to upload a good version of it if it doesn't work during the live stream. So today I'm going to talk about Bulang Shan. I said we started from south to north, so we're going to start at the Burmese border, and today I'm going to drink this tea. This is from Mong Noi, so a village really near the border, near the Burmese border, and this is spring 2023. We will open it here. I can show you a bit the leaves. So we'll start brewing that tea, and then we'll go into the exploration on Google Earth, and I will show you some pictures that I took during my travels. So you can see here the leaves are bigger than average, but not really that big. Lao Man E typically has bigger leaves, and for the rest of Bulang Shan it's usually medium-sized or slightly bigger than average. So we are going to extract some leaves. Again, I don't use a pick because the leaves are loosely pressed. Yeah. And for the videos, I like to use a dark guy one because that way you can see the leaves better, typically. And when brewing tea, I just like to extract, to loosen the leaves like this with my fingers. That way the rinse goes faster. You make sure that the tea is more like loose leaf tea, like matcha. Okay, let's just brew this quickly. So what is special about Bulang Shan tea? A lot of people know Bulang Shan for the bitterness, but I think this is a cliche. This is kind of true that on average Bulang tea is a bitter area, but you can find some examples which are not extremely bitter, and I think it's not the main point actually of a good Bulang Shan tea. Bitterness is good when it pairs well with astringency. I would say when it pairs well with a powerful tea. So if you only have bitterness in the tea but the soup is weak, then the bitterness will come across as unpleasant, I think. You also have to check at how long the bitterness lasts. Usually we like that kind of bitterness that quickly changes into sweetness. So yeah, hello everyone. Okay, you get some static in the sound. Okay, I tried to tweak some parameters, but anyway, yesterday I managed to save the footage that I recorded on my computer. I don't know what's doing this, because when I try a live stream in private, the sound works well, and then when I go public, it seems there's this problem coming. Okay, no problem, I will. Anyway, I can edit the video after. So, yeah. Okay, let's just give it a... I don't want to lose that first time after you rinse the leaves. Yeah, you get a typical fragrance, I think, in Bulang Shan tea. That's one of the characteristics. In the past, they used to be very smoky. It was mainly due to the house, the house design. They had old style houses built on wooden pillars, and they would have a big living room, and they would typically keep a fire lit in the middle of their living room and store the tea on the side, so the tea would get smoky as it was stored in the house. Now, of course, since maybe 2012, 2013, everyone started building new houses, and this problem is not doesn't really occur anymore. But I remember back in 2010 when you tried Bulang Shan tea, you expected it to be quite smoky. We can see the leaves are quite a dark green. Let me zoom in again. Maybe you can see better. So you can see that the leaves are have a dark green, and it's an indication, I would say, of well, they are still slightly yellow. Okay, it's an indication that they give a fairly long shaching. We'll talk about the processing technique. Bulang Shan is quite a conservative area. They like to make handmade tea still a lot compared to other areas. Like, for example, Jingmai embraced the machines much more early than Bulang Shan. And when they do the shaching, it's quite the opposite of Yiwu. They like to give a long shaching with a lot of steaming typically. And this might be just because their tea is naturally quite bitter, and if you don't give a long shaching, that bitterness will tend to be a bit more nasty. So in a way, giving that long shaching with lots of steaming, just like we do in Jingmai, it's a way to tone down the bitterness and somehow make it change into a more palatable kind of bitterness. And it also does good for the sweetness, because I think through that process you kind of convert some of the bitterness into sweetness. And that's, to me, after the fragrance, the second main point of Bulang Shan tea. It has a very, very good sweetness and very good depth, but not the same kind of sweetness as Yiwu, nor the same as Mongku. So that's one of the thing that keeps me enticed into drinking and studying pu'er tea, is that you have those words like sweetness, but in practice you could define different types of sweetness, I think. And usually a good Bulang Shan tea, it really coats the mouth from the start, but it also takes some time to take off. Jingmai tea tends to be quite straightforward and give everything from the first or second brew, while Bulang Shan tea tends to be more long brewing, and you need a bit longer time. You need to appreciate it over the whole session. It will start slow and increase, and then will reach a peak, and will also take quite some time to go down to a more stale level. So Bulang Shan tea is really good for long gongfu sessions. Grandpa style, of course, if you're hardcore, you can enjoy it, but it's more suited to a gongfu session. Grandpa style, the bitterness can indeed get a bit overwhelming. And it's also a material that fits well into blends. Okay, the classic Menghai taste, like the 7542, involves a lot of Bulang Shan material. That's usually what gives the punch of that tea. But it's not a tea that's particularly astringent, and that's also one characteristic where you get more bitterness than astringency. And this is quite rare. A lot of teas have more astringency than bitterness. And that interplay between astringency and bitterness, they form the minerality, I would say. And so I would say this is part of the somewhat mineral teas you get. The most mineral teas, in my opinion, would be Mongsong in the north of Menghai, so we'll see that later. And for example, Jinggu or Yiwu to me don't come across as particularly mineral, because they don't have much of that bitterness nor astringency to make that soup playful on the tongue. So let's just start on Google Earth. Sorry, I'm in the wrong window. Okay, so we are on Google Earth. So okay, you have Asia, so we're here in Yunnan, and we'll go to the south. Xishuangbanna is about here, the limit, okay, this place. And we will go to Menghai. So again, remember my live stream from yesterday, you have like 3 big plateaus here. This is Menghai. We go south, we go to Monghun, the Monghun plateau, and we will keep going south. we will keep going south until we see that kind of spaceship shape. I don't know, it looks a bit like a Mount Calamari cruiser if you're a Star Wars fan. Okay, and here you see there's a big valley. Here, this is already Myanmar, so it's too far. The border is around here, so we'll zoom in here and we will arrive. Okay, the border must be that mountain range here. So we will start by going to Bulang Shan town. So this is the administrative town. There's not that much to see in that place. I will show you a few pictures. This was taken back in 2010 when I had my first camera, just a very cheap point and shoot camera. So I hope you will forgive the lack of picture quality in those earlier pictures. But you can see at that time most of the houses were of the traditional style, and that's why I said it's smoky, because it's basically one big living room and people have very tiny bedrooms which are more like closets on the side, or alternatively they would just sleep in the living room. So in that design you can see the more collectivistic mindset of those people, where the living room was the most important and the largest place. They tend to have very small living rooms, very small bedrooms. And Bulang Shanti at that time had mostly Thai Dicha. As I said, it's a staple for the blends in Menghai, for the Menghai taste. So you have a lot of tea in Bulang Shan, really. And you can see a lot of small trees like this. So this is back in 2010. This is a bit, so these plantations, we can start again maybe our journey on Google Earth. And this is, if we go west, so going from Bulang Shan, we're quite in the south of the Bulang Shan area. If you look at the Bulang Shan area, it's about that big. It's a fairly big area. Okay, you can see across, how big is it across? Yeah, 42 kilometers across. Okay. So it's not a single tea mountain, it's more a mountain range and a group of villages. So what I define here is roughly the administration area, but you could say most of the tea will start from Mannan. Okay, we'll go there later. Let's say we're in Bulang Shan, because you know, back in 2010 I didn't have a car. I didn't have much money to hire a taxi or something, so I just took the public bus, and the public bus just brings you to Bulang Shan. So you're right here, right, and you're not far from the Burmese border. South you have a village which is called Man No, and it's pretty hard to access. Now you can see, unfortunately, the pictures on Google Map are quite hazy, but I hope you will still be able to see. It looks like it hasn't grown that much, and the houses look quite traditional. You can see tea plantations all around here. They also have some gushu, but I don't have that much experience there, because you need to take a small road there, and there you have a checkpoint, probably this one, managed by the army, and it's kind of a buffer zone between Myanmar and China, so the access is a bit restricted. So yeah, I went there once in 2010, but I didn't have a camera at the time, and since then I haven't gone back. I tried once back in 2017, but they wouldn't let me go. Okay, so I won't be able to talk too much about Mano village, but I remember back in 2010 I just started walking west. So if you follow that path, all along that path here you have a couple of villages, and so in those villages that's where those pictures were taken roughly. And to the west you come across very traditional villages, so that was back in 2010, and at that time, yeah, it still looked very preserved, and people were in this tea industry making tea. The place, of course, is mostly populated by the Bulang, and the Bulang, I think, are the biggest tea producers. So basically in Bulang Shan you don't have a lot of gushu, but you have a little bit in every village. And most of the Gushu are in the north in Lao Man E. We'll talk about these later. Let's first go west. Yes, so you go on that road. This is mostly tidy there. This is the main road, and then you have a crossroad here, and then you arrive in the Zhangjia area. So, did I get lost already? No, that crossroad must be a bit earlier, I think. This is the main road. Yeah, it should be around there. And then you keep going. No, it's not. It's more in the south, huh? It's more in the south. Yeah, it's through this valley. This is a beautiful valley there. You can see the big mountain ranges. And there you have scattered villages. It's really not a densely populated area. You can feel it's quite wild. But you can see all here is a plantation tea plantations. One of them is owned by Dai, so they get a lot of material from that area. And so this area, southwest of Bulang Shan, so it's mainly, the most famous village is Zhangjia Sandwe, and it's famous for being the most expensive taiditra that you can find in that area. So you see, if you try to get a view from the road, you're following this small road, and you can see Myanmar in the back. You have lots of temples because the Bulang are Buddhist and they are very faithful. They tend to invest a lot in the temples. You can see that big one here. And this is Zhangjia Sandwe, and you can see this hill. It's quite fun because it's totally covered in tea plantations. And even I went back there in 2019 and it still looks the same. There's no trees at all. You know that it's been a common trend in the famous areas to convert those plantation teas into natural tea gardens, but it's not the case there. And I think it's because they probably have contracts with the big factories, or at least they have that demand for plantation tea, which will likely be used either in blends for the big factories or for making ripe pu'er. And the plantation tea there is really not cheap for plantation tea. It's basically same price as what you would pay for natural tea gardens like in Jingmai or in other places in Bulang Shan. I went there, I tried the tea. Yeah, I find it not so worth it. I still prefer the natural tea garden taste. I think it's more powerful. And they also planted more. So this is Zhangjia Xinzai, I think, like the new village and the old village. But as you can see, these are pictures from 2021, and they totally rebuilt the place. This village is this village, actually. So I was surprised in 2019 when I went there because they totally rebuilt. It was part of what they call the Tuoping policy. That policy which was aimed at like lifting people out of poverty. So it's kind of governmental projects, you know, like what NGOs would do in poor countries. They just rebuilt the villages. So apparently in those areas maybe the income is not so good actually, which would be still surprising because they have a lot of tea. You can see that's another picture. We can see the big mountains from Myanmar in the background, and all in the foreground it's all plantation tea. Yeah, this is, I think, what Zhangjia Sandwe, that famous village with the small hill, looked like. Now you also have, even back in that time, it was still a pretty big scale production. So you had those maybe old state factories that had some higher outputs, and then you had the farmers trying to make tea on their own. My visit in 2019 was quite quick, just one morning, so I didn't get to see much, but it seems indeed that the area looks a bit less developed. People don't really have factories like they would have in other parts of Bulang Shan. So I don't know what's going on. Why are those people not making money or developing? Because sometimes in some areas they do make money, but maybe they use it for gambling or they just do something else. They're not really into doing a tea business big. So, okay, so that's that southwestern part. That's one spot you can remember. It's the Taidi, the plantation tea. Most famous plantation tea in Xishuangbanna comes from there. Now, if you go more in the west, in the northwest like this is a vast area and I haven't explored it that much. You could think you have Jieliang at the northernmost, and I know they have tea gardens, but I haven't visited there. We can probably see the tea gardens. You see, yeah, this looks like Taidi maybe, or corn. I'm not sure actually. But if you look around the village, you can see this is definitely some young trees there, and you might have old trees or older trees growing around the village. The Bulangs, they love to plant trees around their villages. Then you go down Manmai, I'm not sure. You have a bit of tea everywhere, and it's sourced by the big factories. These are really not big names. And you can see a lot of forest as well, so you have a kind of natural reserve in Bulang Shan. And when you take the main road, you will go through a really beautiful kind of primary forest, I could say. But yeah, I won't go into detail on that western edge because I'm not familiar with it. Then we can just go back to Bulang Shan and take the road east. And this is a place I like very much. Same all along that eastern edge, you have a lot of tea gardens. The pictures look terrible, but if you zoom in, you can see this is probably some Taidi here. But I didn't put Google Earth, I'm sorry. Okay, I still need to practice my live streaming skill. So yeah. Yeah, I was just explaining in the west. I don't know too much. It's quite scattered. You don't have, you have a bit of tea in every village. Now we'll go back to Bulang Shan and go east. And through that valley that runs parallel to Myanmar, you can see you have those big mountains, which are the border. We will arrive to a nice village, which is Mong Noi. You can see it's very tidily packed, and this is this place. This was taken back in 2017, I think. It was a really beautiful morning. I remember with my wife we walked around the village. So it was established in the paddies, around the paddies where they will grow rice and corn, as you can see, and the tea there is on the hillsides. You can see this is a newly built village. They had an old village which they have to move out from to be closer to the road, and I don't know, for some seismic activity stuff. It's not exactly clear, but the government told them to move out. And you can see the tea gardens are on the side. And so this is quite common in Bulang Shan. You have like a little plateau and some hills around. Lao Man E is also a bit like this. So they tend to build the village in the middle of that plateau and not really on the hillside. Maybe it's a tradition, a habit from the Bulang, because usually most of the villages are built on the hillsides. So we walked at that time, we walked through the tea gardens, and so this is the tea I'm drinking. This is the village from the tea I'm drinking now. And there were some questions actually as to the age of the tea gardens. I labeled it big trees because they have two different qualities of trees. As I understand, they planted the tea trees in two stages. They have old tea trees, but which aren't really huge tea trees, but they date back to maybe a long time ago, probably 50 plus years, but it's not really clear because last time they told me the old village was established 30 years ago, and then like 10 years ago they had to move to the new village. But now I'm a bit confused the old village might have been established a longer time ago. These people are not Bulang, they are Hani. Hey, why is it going back to this picture? Oh, I don't have all my pictures. That's really bad. I thought I had planned all this. Okay, let's see how we can solve this, because I miss a lot of pictures here. So yeah, you can have a look here on this picture. This is, I think the older tea gardens are around that area. This is what it looks like, the environment, and they have more growing in the forest. Okay, then how can I show you the pictures? Maybe I will try something else. Let me see. Why can't I display all those pictures? Okay, I will just do a very barbaric thing. That way we can see the pictures. Yeah, is it working correctly like this? Yeah. So this is, yeah, Weidong village, and so you have the, yeah, this is what like the probably the older plantations look like. So they might be 30 years old, but I think more, I would say something like 50 if you look at the garden design. They look a bit similar to the landscape in Jingmai, actually. You can, so, and this is some more recent plantations built on the hilltops near the new village. So you can see the village is quite well arranged here. And they also planted, when we visited, they had just started to plant some tea in the forest. So you can see that the tea trees are really young here, maybe 3 years old. And I don't know what they did with the forest now. Now in Bulang Shan, in a lot of, like I said, they are quite traditional. They do, I would say, apart from Lao Man E, they tend to do a lot of smaller scale production, although like people try to build more modern factories, but still back in 2017 you can see they would dry the tea on mats like this. And you can see that the leaves are not that big in that village. Yeah, so this is other views. You can see some tea in the foreground. Okay. Yeah, let me just check the comments. So I've been sourcing the tea from this village quite regularly since we started doing business, because I like the taste. I think it's a good representative of the general Bulang Shan taste. It's not too expensive, but it's not the cheapest tea you can find either. It's not common plantation tea. It has a moderate bitterness. That's what I like in this tea. It's not a cliché Bulang Shan tea. If you want a more cliché Bulang Shan tea, maybe you can try Man Xin Long, or you can try on Zhangjiajai on the western area. They've planted a lot of tea from Myanmar, from the bitter varietal. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this, but there are two varietals in Bulang Shan growing. You have the sweet tea called Tian Cha, and the bitter tea called Ku Cha. And so each of the village will typically have the two varietals growing together. Either they separate, they know each tree, so you can taste the leaves. You can taste the leaves and know which varietal it is. Or like in many villages, they don't separate very accurately. They just know that in one garden you have mostly bitter tea, and in another one mostly sweet tea. So each garden might taste different because it would be a blend of the two varietals. And Bitter tea, I find it quite hard to enjoy, but recently I visited my friend in Lao Man E, and I have a good one actually from Lao Man E. It seems that the strong bitterness tend to tone down as the tea trees age. At least that's what I think. I understand. Let's go to another brew of this tea. So I really recommend trying this Mong Noi tea, because it's a good general representative of Bulang Shan. It's not the most famous area, not the best tea you can find. That would be Lao Man E definitely, but you can say it's a daily drinker. And so in some years we had the younger tea trees, the cheaper ones, but this year we decided to buy the more expensive ones. So that's why we labeled it as big trees, but it's not exactly big trees like you would find in Lao Man E, Hekai, or Lao Banzang. It's older gardens. Now we always have this problem with the denomination, because saying small trees and big trees is very relative to where you are. In lots of places the trees are not that big. Maybe we can have a look at the leaves, so you can see they look a bit quite yellow, I would say, quite similar to our Jingmai tea, and the leaves look, I would say, a bit bigger maybe than Jingmai tea, but I would say the processing style is very similar. So those were cooked in a wok, and you can see the soup is also quite thick, not the thickest tea you can get. It's a daily drinker. It's really not as good as like Lao Man E Gusu or something, but it's fine. Let me just check the comment section. You can send a comment if you want me to discuss, and then I will move on to the big piece of this presentation, which is of course the northern part and Lao Man E. So, did the Chinese quality standard for tea mark S play? So no, I think the question is, before Bulang Shan tea was smoky, what factors led to the change? It's mainly people having money to build new houses. I don't think the government played an active part in changing this. Maybe there was some training done. I'm not sure about this, but it's mainly that now that people have those modern houses, they don't put the fire in the living room anymore. Yeah, actually there was some training done by doctors, you know, like the health department, because living with your fire all the time, it gives you lung cancer. It's like smoking, maybe even worse, because the smoke lingers in the room. So at that time, yeah, that was the lifestyle, and they encourage people to create a kitchen and have the fire in the kitchen. So nowadays it's very rare to find those fires in the living room, but in Southeast Asia you still do. Yeah, doing fancy names. Oh, I don't think about this, because I think it's still important for people to learn name the tea by their proper area of origin, so that hopefully you can slowly learn the different names of the villages and then have some different comparison points. If you add a fancy name on top, then it's even harder to remember the origin of each tea, I guess. How well traveled are tea producers? Well, that's the difference, I think, between you could say conscientious and generally good tea producers and people who just do that because they were born here and just do it for a living. People who are interested in tea, generally they like to travel, so it's still common that people who know a bit about tea and make tea in the villages, it's common for them to travel around. And it's also good to build a trade network, because if you have customers, for example, who visit Chiang Mai and then want to go to Bulang Shan, well, I can say, hey, I know a guy in Lao Man E, I know a guy in Mong Noi, you can stay with them. So it's also a kind of trade network, and sometimes people also recommend some customers to us. So, yeah. Yeah, why blue roofs? I think it's some kind of fashion in southern Menghai. So we will go actually straight to Lao Man E. So let me, yeah, indeed, Lao Man E has a lot of blue roofs, like you can see now. That was taken in 2012. At that time, the village was being rebuilt. You can see you still have some old, you still have some older houses. But of course, back in 2012, Lao Man E was already famous. So now we're north. Yeah, let me just show you on the map. We're now north. So we go back to Bulang Shan, and now we go north. So you have a road, it's about 10 kilometers away. And here you have Lao Man E. Fortunately the pictures are a bit better on this side. And Lao Man E, same, is in a kind of pit, so they don't have a lot of land. I guess the village extended a lot. Maybe there were fewer people, but it's the biggest village now in Bulang Shan. And it's by far the biggest village for ancient tea gardens, because you can see here all what's scattered forest here. Scattered forest cover is ancient tea gardens. And they worked really hard in Bulang Shan, because as soon as the tea got expensive in the early 2000s, they started planting massively. So they have a lot of tea everywhere. And it's Shanghai Natural Tea Garden. You can see they have a lot of gardens, actually. Their gardens extend quite far away from the village. I've heard they even maybe get some gardens in other villages, or buy some land from other villages to plant some gardens. You can see all these places, I think, are nowadays tea gardens. And why? Because they have a good soil. The tea they have there just tastes really good. So you can see the pictures back in 2012. That was our first visit. Yeah, we were quite young at that time. So it was in the Gushu Gardens. And yeah, so they have some really big trees there. The soil is said by the locals to be quite fertile in Bulang Shan, like in Mong Noi, in Lao Man E. The tea trees grow quite fast. So you can see this is also from 2012, and you can see you have that scattered forest cover. This would be newer tea plantations. Maybe those were planted in the 90s. And this is a modern picture of roughly the same area. I feel the forest cover has grown a bit, so maybe they also took in more techniques of that natural tea gardens conversion and somehow rebuilt the forest cover during this time. And you can see this is modern Lao Man E in the background. This is a nice hike you can take up the temple. So the village has extended a lot. And so they are Buddhist, and thanks to their new stream of income, really with the tea, they invested massively into building temples and doing Buddhist events. There are so many events now that you have a kind of committee for that, and it has to be more regulated. It means you have those offerings to Buddha. So usually every family needs to do if it can afford it, the family should do the offerings to Buddha once in its lifetime. But now there are so many offerings to Buddha that you have to book a date for doing that, because otherwise everyone would be doing that continuously. They have like 5 temples, some pagodas, some kind of retreat centers. They invite monks from Myanmar, and they have like a lot of events. And interestingly, despite being that developed, sometimes they like to keep some animals in their house. So they are rich, but not as I don't know, not as Tu Hao, not as new rich as Lao Banzang, for example. I feel they keep a good balance. They manage their money in a wise way, you could say, because they still invest a lot towards their cultural activities, their cultural life with the Buddhism, and they also like to keep some animals or some kind of farming. And in the processing techniques, it's still largely done by wok, even up to this day. So this was probably in 2017 taken. Yeah, so you can expect most of the material in Lao Man E to be processed by hand, but this is changing for the small trees, especially because they really have a lot of tea, actually probably even more than in Jingmai. So this is also good because Lao Man E tea is maybe a bit less faked, or at least it's not really hard to get true Lao Man E tea if you pay the full price, and the price is pretty high. But they have a big amount. I don't know, maybe 100 tons a year, something like that. This is Ai Xiangnan. So we met in 2019, and he's my good friend. So every time I go, I'm in the area, I like to stay at his home or pay a visit. And this is his new factory that he built, I think, in 2020 maybe, or 2021. So you can see it's not a huge factory, but like they tend to manage the money pretty well in Lao Man. You know, they invest really the money in improving the tea production, and you can feel that they are really conscientious. You can feel they really love tea in Lao Man. It's a big part of the culture. It's not only a business for them. So they try to improve their technique, and so that's why you typically don't have processing issues in Lao Man because they make the tea well. So this is some new machines that Ai Xiangnan bought, and so this is the better shaching machines, you could say, more modern ones, which have been popular for about 4 years now, and it's supposed to give you more control, so you can do a better job. It's still small batches. You can do a better job at processing the tea, but you can see he still has a nice line of woks. And you can see also his drying area. And so it's nice to have a good greenhouse like this. You can usually when you go in the countryside, you can check the size of the operations by looking at how big the greenhouse is, because that's the limiting factor when you make pu'er tea. So if you have a big greenhouse, you can dry a lot of tea, so you have that big production capacity. And he even has a tasting room, so you can feel surely the difference in terms of welcoming the guests and stuff in Lao Man, because everything feels very professional, you know, without being tacky. So if you visit Ai Xiangnan in Lao Man, he will brew different kinds of tea. He keeps teas he makes from every year, and you can see now Lao Man is quite a bit more developed than back in the day. And you can see here all this landscape, it's all tea gardens, and even the mountains in the background, it's also probably tea gardens that they own. Now in Lao Man, the tea leaves are really big. That's one characteristic of Lao Man tea. And if you have spring tea, it tends to be very furry with lots of hair on the buds. So you can expect really big buds. And that's a clear difference. For example, Lao Banzang tea, the leaves are not as big typically. Well, it's complicated. They have several varietals. So I hope you will have the opportunity maybe to visit me, and I can take you on a trip with Ai Xiangnan. So let me just see. Yeah, and one other particularity of Lao Man is the low altitude. It's only 1,200 meters. So it's quite interesting because typically we say good tea grows at maybe above 1400, 1500. Okay, most of the good tea mountains are above 1500, but it's not the case in Lao Man E. And despite that, it's really good tea. To me, I would say it's my favorite village actually overall. I don't know what's going on with the soil there, but everything you plant, even the small trees, they make really good tea, really intense taste. So that's why I decided this year to produce cakes from Lao Man E, of course for the big trees, but this is very expensive material because it's a famous village. And I'm still okay with the price because I think it's worth it really. If you look, if you compare in that price range, I think it's still the best tea. And I also sourced some of their Shanghai from their natural tea gardens. And you can compare the natural tea gardens from Lao Man E to the bigger, the older gardens that they have in Menghai. And I would say it's kind of a close difference. I think I tried a blind tasting of that, and I still preferred the older gardens from Menghai. Overall, I don't think there's a wide difference of taste. In Bulang Shan, they all have that similar profile. You have some bitterness, which goes from moderate to really strong. Astringency is medium, and astringency, the bitterness tends to be higher than the astringency. And the combination of the two builds that minerality. But it's not the most mineral of the Menghai teas. Then the fragrance, it tends to be quite smothered. I think it's also due to their processing style because they like to cook. Give a strong shaching with a long time. Like in Lao Man E, they will typically cook for 30 to 40 minutes. It's big leaves, and they want them to cook for a long time with lots of steaming and low temperature, which makes them turn yellow. And that contributes to toning down the fragrance. If you gave a shorter shaching, you would have a better fragrance, a more explosive fragrance, I would say. Not necessarily better in terms of complexity. And that's what I like in Bulang Shan tea. There's something in it, you know, it's a bit smothered, but there's some really good complexity. Something animal, something leathery, and slightly smoky, actually. So, back in the day, I said the tea was smoky because of the smoke, but once they changed their house design, the tea was still a bit smoky. It's just that I think it's not from the smoke. It must be maybe from the varietal or from the soil. Something from the terroir gives that slightly smoky edge. A bit tobacco-y, maybe. A bit like a dry cigar. Oh, and now I can feel that the bitterness is... but that's a lively bitterness, you see, because when you drink, it comes like this, and when you swallow, after 1 or 2 seconds, you don't feel it anymore, and just sweetness remaining. Small trees would have more astringency than the big trees, and overall, the big trees would be more powerful. So then the most obvious, and that I didn't mention, why are these teas so expensive? It's because they have a good huigan, they have a good chachi, they have what I would call depth. Once you swallow them, you can feel them flowing down the throat, you know, and it makes your whole body a bit fuzzy, I would say. It's very pleasant. People say the chachi in that area in Bulang Shan tends to be more energizing than calming. For example, Iwu tea is known for having a very calming chachi. I don't know in practice what really creates those feelings, but I can surely say I acknowledge this. When you drink a good Lao Man E tea, you feel a bit like you're going to fly. So let's see what questions or comments do we have. I think I have about finished my presentation of Bulang Shan tea. Let me just check because I took some notes I don't want to forget anything in there. So yeah, special sweetness, minerality, and good depth. That's really important. Then we started in Bulang Shan. In the western part, we explored Zhangjiajai. So 3 villages which are completely cultivated with plantation tea. I said the south, I don't know too much. It's at the Myanmar border. They also probably get tea from Myanmar, but I know even less about this. Then in the east, we went to Mong Noi, the tea I'm drinking now. Mong Noi is not the only village there, it's just one of them, but I had to pick one, of course. And then, yeah, the big western area, I don't know too much. There are scattered villages with mostly plantation tea and some gusu, some ancient tea gardens in every village, but in very small quantity. And of course, where I like to spend more time is the north with Lao Man E. And Lao Man E has the biggest area for ancient tea gardens, and it's also the most expensive, the most famous tea of that area. What else can I say? So lots of plantation tea in Shanghai, bitter and sweet. Luca, what are you doing, Luca? 我在做直播 Luca. I'm doing the live stream. 你要过来吗？你过来。Connections with Myanmar, so yeah, tea across the border, that's something that needs to be explored. I know that they took a lot of those bitter varietal cuttings that they will plant. They took them from Myanmar and planted them in southern. And planted them in the villages in southern Bulang. So, because bitter tea, it's too bitter for enjoying on its own, but it can be good for blend. You can put like 5 or 10% of it in a Menghai blend, and that will make some pretty stale tea turn into something more dynamic. Of course, that's for lower quality tea. The soil is said to be quite fertile indeed, and that's why the tea trees grow fast. That's maybe why the tea trees are so big in Lao Man E. I had to identify the type of bedrock. What's interesting is if I looked at that big complicated soil map, bedrock map, Bulang Shan seems to be homogeneous. I needed to do that, but I wasn't really able to translate the Chinese of that because they have rocks of different eras and I don't know really much about this. But it's interesting to notice that Bulang Shan area with the more fertile soil than the rest of Sichuan Bana grows over a common bedrock, a same uniform type of bedrock. Then the ethnic groups, yeah, I forgot to mention, but sorry, somebody is calling me. Okay, I forgot to mention it, but Mong Noi is honey, and these people come from Lao Banzang. So I think I will do a dedicated video on the different ethnic composition of Bulang Shan. But not all the villages in Bulang Shan are Bulang. Most of them are, but some aren't. There has been some complex migration. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, making aggressive tea is usually more risky than a sweet tea. And this is also true for buying, because when you make a weak sweet tea, it will taste a bit bland, but it will taste boring, but it will still be okay, I would say. While if you have an aggressive tea and that it's weak, you have that strong bitterness, but a weak overall tea, and it really tastes nasty, a bit corrosive, I would say. So if you're into cheap tea, I recommend it's better to buy a cheap Jingu or Iwu tea or even Bangwai like we do now, because those are naturally sweet, and even if it's weak, it won't be really terrible. But a cheap Bulang Shan tea, unblended, it can be really hard to palate. And I think you can understand that by drinking like a young 7542. These teas are quite hard to enjoy, especially when they are young. Now, personally, maybe I would prefer to drink a nasty tea than a boring tea, but that's a personal opinion. Yeah, so that's about all what I had to say about Bulang Shan. I hope you enjoyed this quick presentation. I will just go through the comments a bit. And I'm sorry again for the audio. I will try to fix that in the post-processing. Are the Taiyezhong varietals adaptable to colder climates? You can do it if you can try to nurture a cold-resistant Taiyezhong, but naturally they are much more vulnerable to frost than the small-leaf varietal. So I don't think there's any big-leaf varietal growing in temperate or not tropical climates. If you look at Korea, Japan, I think it's all small leaf varietal. Now, I guess if you go to the higher altitude places, you can find some cultivars which are adapted to frequent frost episodes. So what do Lao Man people think about other Yunnan pu'ers? I'm not sure actually. Well, when you're drinking Lao Man tea every day, probably you find that all the other teas taste a bit weak. I haven't asked their opinion on the matter. But it's good when you visit the tea mountains that you bring them other samples. That way, you know, it's always good to share tea. I hope they can still enjoy a good tea despite being in one of the best terroirs. Yeah, okay. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your comments. And as I'm being told the sound is glitchy, then I will try again to fix the problem, and I will upload a clean video. So thank you for watching and see you later. Bye bye.